Hey everybody, welcome back to Terminus, the story of extreme metal podcasts. I am the death metal guy, aka The Cult is Alive, played in its entirety on classic rock radio.
I mean, that's too close to real.
It makes your skin crawl, right?
Welcome to Radio Fenris. Anyway, I am the black metal guy, aka Screaming in 8K.
That's gonna be sick when Napalm Records and all of its shitty German like joke folk metal stuff starts being played in 8K on YouTube. So you can really get perfect fidelity on the xylophone solos or whatever the fuck they're doing these days.
Yeah, I want to see the new Wind Rose video with perfect resolution on those dwarven breastplates.
Is that an actual band name, or did you just make that up?
Unfortunately, it's an actual band name. I think it's one of the dumbest band names I've ever heard, because I think it might be supposed to be a Rising Wind. It's kind of a cool idea. I like wind. I like rising. Who doesn't? But I feel like it's kind of supposed to be a pun. It's shit that gets pushed in the YouTube, like if you're like not signed into YouTube, but it knows you like metal, so it shows you random shit.
Yeah.
Like, so like this is, it's like literally Napalm Records. They're a band from Italy, and they seem to be, at least at this point, entirely themed about dwarves.
Fuck, that sucks.
It really sucks, and not even like Lord of the Rings dwarves. They're like fucking World of Warcraft dwarves.
Yeah. They like beer and they're funny and short.
Yeah, it's miserable. Yeah, it's totally miserable.
Did I talk to you about that time?
They wrote a song they wrote a song that got memed somehow. Maybe this is how I knew about it. Called Diggy Diggy Hole.
Oh no, because that's a
song based on a meme.
Yeah, it's from Smosh or some fucking YouTube gaming thing. They came up with some joke song and then they covered it.
Yes.
God.
So watched out of morbid curiosity. I watched the video for this once. I recommend it to everyone if you'd like to cringe for until you can't cringe anymore.
Well, did I tell you? I don't know if I talked about this on the show, but one time, me and my buddy, who works at the same company as me, we're working from my house, and we got to some downtime, and I was just like, let's see what Napalm Records is doing, because we both hate, like modern, like pathetic gamer folk metal shit, and we just started going through Napalm Records' most recent uploads, and you will find bands that no metalhead has ever heard of, but it's just like stage fillers for the fourth stage at Wacken type shit. Just the most reductive, obnoxious joke folk metal stuff that makes Corpaclani look like fucking Inferno.
No,
it's
the consumer base for these bands is like gamers and furries.
Well, but you repeat yourself.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah. There's a Venn diagram there. It's a lot like a circle.
Exactly. No, it's miserable. And what was fascinating though is like me and my buddy. We're both. He's the brother of the drummer in one of my bands, and we're both really into extreme metal and metal in general, and we had heard of zero of these bands.
No, I know what you mean. It's like, it's different. There's the world of like Bandcamp, Metal Friendship Club, right? That's one world. And there's the world, that's one sort of non-world of metal. There's like YouTube metal, Atmo Black, which is kind of the same thing.
Yeah. It's a different parallel universe. Yeah.
It's a different parallel universe, for sure.
And it's just like, but I think it's like it's only listened to it's only like listened to like boomers in Austria.
I don't think boomers, like, if you were a boomer, you would have grown up like listening to like, maybe not good metal, but much more substantial bad metal. Like the bad metal for most of the 70s, right? The bad metal everything before Motorhead.
Exactly. No, it's well. You'd be surprised. You go to a city like mine with a more substantial metal scene. You see what some of those boomers are into, and you're like, "Fuck, man, we should cut off Social Security now. You don't deserve this."
Isn't it also weird that, like, the two biggest dork metal labels, like, Nuclear Blast at least does have some credible extreme metal acts, right? Like, they have like, Ruins of Bavaras. But,
yeah.
like, both of these, like, goofy mainstream labels are named after, like, atrocious war crime weapons of American Imperium, right? Nuclear Blast and fucking Napalm Records. It's like
the material should be so much cooler.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it should be like Agent Orange, fucking, Sodom. And I'm sure they were named in that spirit, but like, yeah, like how far they've fallen.
Well, fortunately on this show, we don't have to worry about any of that shit. In fact, we have something very special that has just returned to the metal scene. But before that, it's very important that you give me the 16 digits on the front of your credit card, the 3-digit security code on the back, and the 4-digit expiration date. And you can do that over at Patreon, where $3 and up gets you access to the Terminus Prime bonus episodes, and $5 and up gets you access to the Terminus Black Circle, our private Discord server where lately we've just been sharing clothes with images of 9/11 on it. Things have gotten a little bit weird in your absence, Black Metal guys. So, and I did it kind of backwards. And then if you're not quite that committed, you just want to see a little bit more of what we're about, feel free to follow us on social media. Me, the Death Metal Guy, on Facebook at Terminus Podcast, and the Black Metal Guy on Instagram at Terminus Extreme Metal. But let's get rid of all that Unity shit, all that profitable good time Patreon grift shit, and let's talk about some very important friends of ours who have put out a new EP. And Black Metal Guy, God knows, we've been talking about this band periodically on the podcast for 2 years, and it's finally happened. Who is back?
Avsky has returned.
Yes, baby!
We called this, I think, at least a year ago.
I think you said that you were seeing some, like, stirrings from their camp, that they were going to be on their way back, yeah?
And it just seemed like the right time. It, like, yeah, so, it's one of those situations where everyone has either had their kid or done their time, and, now they can get back to being in an extremely antisocial black metal band. So this new EP is called Sjukdom och död, Sickness and Death. I was disappointed really by how few sort of like COVID's gonna kill everyone and that's a good thing records we got. And so thank God they came out with one. They'll leave it to these guys. For now, it is independent on Bandcamp. I bet someone will pick it up. I could see it being put out on like the that good imprint of Regain that does a lot of underground stuff. What is it? I'm gonna fucking forget the name.
I don't even remember.
Helter Skelter. I could see Helter Skelter putting it out.
Or Moribund will pick them back up or something,
But yeah, so this is, yeah, so how to explain... So this EP, I think it's pretty clearly just like a warm-up round, right? Mm-hmm. Or a warning shot. These are probably riffs that in some form they've had hanging around for a while, or just shit they decided to kick out together in the garage a couple years ago, right? And I think it was written in 2020, so maybe, so peak plague, they recorded this. So how do we describe... We've got some ways. We've brought them up on the show before as a good example of what we call the trench coat era of black metal in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And one specific take on it, which is kind of this style of extremely punky Scandinavian BM. that's like sort of faithful to for the early 2000s, relatively faithful to the second wave, but really accenting the underlying punk and Hellhammer tendencies in a lot of those other bands, and also, very close to the Orthodox scenes happening in Sweden at that time, as well as to DSBM. In some ways, or to some degree. The more antisocial side of DSBM. And there are really three bands that fit this niche, right? I'd say Avsky, Kraft, and Catharsis. Of those three, Kraft and Catharsis were the ones that were popular.
Yeah.
Right? Popular with people outside, like, the actual black metal underground. And, Kraft had more kind of D-beat, Bathory, punky stuff of the thing that has kind of become very popular. It was a little closer to, say, The Cult is Alive, right? And Catharsis had a great sound, right? They were, like, just crushing in the red mayhem, right? However, neither of them had very good songwriting, really forgettable songwriting. And Avsky was nastier and punker by far than either of them.
Yeah, it was Avsky was very dedicated to channeling caustic asshole energy. There's
yes.
Like you get the sense that I say this completely affectionately, that the guys behind this are real pieces of shit, Which is great. I mean, if you're going to do this kind of like caustic, punky black metal, yeah, I should think you're probably just a fucking asshole in real life,
Yeah, very, very sort of spitting on the sidewalk energy, right? This is, their sort of calling card song off of the record Malignant is called Fuck Your Values, Fuck Your Beliefs. And we've played that before as an interlude on the show. And that's a jam. And if you listen to that song, you'll immediately hear that these guys were really... G.G. Allen is very popular with black metal people, but this band really is the G.G. Allen of black metal.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if they were particularly known for stage theatrics or antics. They weren't... I was maybe too young to know if they were, but this was not an image-first band.
No, certainly not.
Way aesthetic, not drama, not aesthetics. This was just about really nasty songs. And, kind of verging on black and roll, but this really doesn't rock. It just stomps and crushes. Right?
Yeah, people who don't know crust punk will call it crusty.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I guess you could argue that it is in the way that the most metal kind of crust bands are. Like, it's very driller killer. There's a lot of that kind of energy.
It's very G.G. Allen has been godfathered into crust because he was just such a dick, right? They probably have a problem with a lot of that, but because he was just such a miserable dude, they really like him, right? He's sort of part of that. And I mean, this Avsky has that great quality that, bands like Dark Throne and even Emperor had of sounding like Discharge without remotely sounding like Discharge. like Kraft sounds a lot, Avsky sounds a different 5-letter name. Avsky sounds a lot like Discharge without really cloning it. However, on this new EP, I feel like a lot of the signature aspects of the sound are dialed back.
Possibly. I mean, it's also just... I get where you're coming from, but it's just such a radically different time. I mean, the last new material that Avsky produced was in 2010. I mean, it's been a dozen years since they've released, like, new material. There's only been, like, re-releases and compilations since then. And let's be honest, I mean, when's the last time you went back and listened to, Malignant or Scorn or something like that?
Well, my friend, I went back and...
Probably, like, yesterday, so for you, yeah.
I went back and listened to Malignant 3 days ago to cross-reference it for the show, because I was curious. The new stuff does sound different, so... Fuck Your Values is just this driving, mostly mid-tempo song. Listening to that song again, I'm just like, my god, this completely informed my sense of, like, riffing. Like, how I play riffs and whatever. Even the blasting riff there. It's got kind of this, like, crushing mid-tempo blast. But, like, the other songs on there are not as just kind of stompy. They can work more like conventional black metal songs. But the things that are interesting about it, there can be some... It's all very deliberately stripped down riffing, but there's some of it that does... You've associated Avsky with Soren a few times. I don't think there are any personnel connections, but we also wouldn't know, because Soren has remained pretty mystery-shrouded. But there's a lot of nasty kind of... keening disharmonic melody on it that's kind of Soren-y, just played way lower on the fretboard and way fuzzier. Mm-hmm. And they make it's the epitome of what you call blocky song structures.
Oh, yeah, right? Yeah.
They make a virtue out of it. And the weird thing is, this EP, very short songs, right? And you would think punky black metal, very short songs. Malignant, almost everything is over 5, probably far over that. There's like 8-minute songs on there. Mm-hmm. And so they have they're 8-minute songs with maybe 4 to 5 riffs that move in these really long blocks and just sort of just crush into one another. And so, it's deliberately stripped down and bare bones. You're not going to get sort of like high-flying sacramentum riffs, and you're not going to get like a particular kind of like, well, yeah, you're not going to get that sort of thing, and you're not going to get like elaborate developmental long song structures. But it's more like, when I went back and listened to it, it was in some ways more like normal black metal than I anticipated.
Yeah.
But this new one is more like that in a different way. A lot of them, it's less muscular, I think, and it's kind of, it's a lot just more like the Orthodox stuff that was happening in Sweden at the same time as Avsky.
Yeah. Well, I think that maybe something to consider is just the idea that if Avsky as a project is sort of like, is sort of like based on being inherently reactionary, to what's going on in the rest of black metal.
That's a good point.
Then maybe this move kind of makes sense. Maybe they can't. It's difficult to. You can't reject just because there's so many bands now that kind of sound like Avsky did. You know what I mean? So it's like, to reject modern black metal, they have to kick out in a slightly different direction now. Because that's always been part of the essence of Avsky, was a sort of like fuck off nowadays black metal quality.
I think that's a very good point. There's nobody who really sounds like them, because if they did, all that fucking blackened crust shit would actually be good, right? But there's stuff claiming to fill the same niche.
Yeah.
Right? And, if they released stuff that sounded like that, if they released their old stuff now, it might be popular, right? And
yeah.
I think
they don't want that. No, fuck that. No.
So let's listen to it and check it out. And, we will, yeah.
Well, all right. So I think I agree with you that this feels like a warm-up round. This is a really short EP. It's just 4 songs. It's just a hair over 15 minutes. But I will say, I think you agree, the back 2 tracks are the stronger ones, because those are the ones that we sampled.
I like the first riff on the album, because it's just this super nasty Soren type thing. But then it just goes away, and yeah, other than that, the first couple tracks are kind of unremarkable.
Yeah, they kind of blow by. But then we get to Livets Itterstad Dag, and boy, oh boy, do you want just like caustic, impossibly arrogant, retard black metal riffs? Well, baby, let's go.
Sounds good.
I am still firmly convinced there's something in the water when it comes to black metal vocals right now. And this, for Avsky, it could just be a matter of, like, age. It's 12 years since the last new release, but these vocals definitely just sound drunker and, like, pukier and just more awful and antagonistic than they ever had before.
I swear, everywhere I think it's also the times. I think everyone is infected with a case of fuck this shit.
Yeah, nobody gives a like because some of those vocals sound like almost like Mons Veneris vocals, just a sort of like puke wailing,
The spirit is very close to Morte Incandescente. That's
yes,
what I was getting at when I said sidewalk spitting.
This also, I'm also
outside the bar and not stepping aside when people walk down the street.
Yeah, and just like like vomiting just so the bouncers can't see you, so they won't cut you off. It's
attractive woman walks down the street. Don't stand aside. Sigma.
This is Sigma male grind set energy. This whole record, but I also just really like the spirit behind that main riff, just that big chunky black and roll thing, but with that little sort of like freezing moon modifier throwaway phrase tucked in there. It's like it seems like
just that kind of like gothic melody.
Yeah, that little descending arpeggio figure. It's like it's such a simple idea, but again, it's the kind of riff you only get when you've been doing this for 20 years. It's smart, it's sophisticated, it's channeling heavy metal, but it's also just really fucking stupid and mean, and that's awesome,
Absolutely, yeah. So I think you got the part that's the most like sustainably stompy on this record.
That's the big RAC banger on the record.
Other point about like the vocals, it's like, I think I had this in the notes somewhere, but like basically every place I tried to sample, someone is going blah.
Yeah, because that's what black metal's about, is going blah at cool moments.
On that track, I loved how he was hitting this. It's very vocal-driven music at this point. It kind of was before, too, but like it kind of has to be because it's very stripped down. But like, this is a very vocal-driven EP, and the more you listen to them, the cooler. The way they could be mixed with a little less reverb, I feel like, to put them a little more up front.
Well, I think listening to this again, I'm pretty confident that this was like a live recording. This is like some mics set up in a garage. There's something about the quality of the reverb that suggests like aluminum siding kind of thing. And something about the whole vibe, I don't think this was recorded in a studio. I think this was a really good home recording in like a garage practice space kind of thing.
Well, that's awesome, and I thoroughly approve. I guess I mean like it might actually have more to do with how the guitars are mixed. Right? The guitar sound it's thinner and more classically cold on this record than it was on the older stuff.
Yeah.
But like something about it, when I listen, there's something about the sound where when I listen to it, the vocals can just run together, kind of, not because they're not super intense, but just because there's a lot of them. And they maybe it's the vocals are fighting for the same sonic space as the guitar.
Yeah, it sounds to me like there's two layers of vocals a lot of the time, and you get the sort of, if my theory about the production is right, you've got so much natural reverb just bouncing off all the surfaces in this kind of like smaller room, because you'll notice like when guitars start, it's like they accelerate in volume in this really distinct way. That's sort of the reverb catching up with the rest of the tone. Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. But like, anyway, point being, once you really start to listen to it a few times and notice the vocals, they're insanely powerful. And, and they have hooks built into them. So like in this track, in the one you sampled, he was doing things he doesn't do on the rest of the record, I think, which was like strong emphasis on this. Yeah, like that. That's like this song thing, Whereas on the next one, the Phantom Carriage, it's a lot more about... So playing the riff to Blood Dawn by Marduk is always nice. But there's this other thing going on. So there's a lot of nods to other bands on this record, which I think is like probably kind of deliberate.
Yeah.
Like it's you know, they're like they're warming up to Return, and they're like paying tribute to other sort of Swedish greats. And I think part of that is that there's more just like of this sort of classic second wave gothic melody stuff going on. Like you know, more things that sound like Dorian scales and stuff like that, or like very chromatic versions of minor scales or whatever. So here again, you get these these kinds of chromatic minor runs that have the same kind of tonality as that thing that you were saying sounded mayhemy on the last one. Mm-hmm. But with that kind of like ripping kind of punk beat and those kinds of racing minor chording, it sounds kind of dissection-y. Like really simplified dissection.
Yeah.
Like really just like basic elements of dissection, main verse riff. And the title of the track, The Phantom Carriage, also signals that, I think. Like, that's like the Somberline cover.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I'm not, you know, who knows? Maybe it wasn't on purpose, but I don't think it's an accident. Like, it feels like they're gesturing to these other, much more hi-fi black metal bands. And even the, you know, they do a variation also in that thing, in the punky sequence you liked, that you were saying is a 4 against 2 thing. They're doing a variation on like a skank beat from Pentagram, I think, right? Something off Pentagram.
Yeah, I could definitely imagine. Yeah, it's like a slow down.
Oh, sorry. Something like that, right?
Yeah, it's like a slow down Big Gravel Cessnat or Drummer on Dog thing.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. So, So yeah, I don't know. That's just something I noticed here, is that this seems to be gesturing deliberately to some of the classics, as a way of rebuilding guitar technique for the new stuff. Well,
you see, one thing that just strikes me listening to these samples again, you know, it's like Avsky I see as a band that's like inherently kind of reactionary to nowadays black metal, whatever time that is. But my question is like, is this a little? Maybe this could be too cool now. Maybe people who are really into like new Panzer War releases would be into this. It's like, how does Avsky stop this? Do they have to punch a woman on stage or something?
It's but what is it? That's the fucking That's the Deifago method, right?
Hail! This is Brandon from Cromlech, and you're listening to Terminus.
All right, and we are back from talking about all sorts of things to talk about one thing: Diabolical Bloodswords by Theriomorph, out now on, at this point, the kind of storied label Terratur Possessions. So Terratur is known for a particular kind of sound. They were one of those one of those labels that was sort of holding it down for underground black metal at a time when those networks were not that strong. Except maybe, Finland would be one, or, whatever. Certainly, in the, like, late 00s, early teens, and stuff like that. And they sort of helped define the modern scene in a lot of ways. But the music associated with that label is very transitional. It's like Orthodox black metal, but very stripped down and punky, and often with a greater emphasis on riffing than you would get in the more glitzy sort of song/live performance-oriented Orthodox bands. And so this project has a long history with Terratur. It was originally named as something like Cornier. That has an that's if I pronounced it as it was written, we would have to bleep it out. It was this sort of one-man project that did a couple records in the late 00s, early teens. The last one being Funereal Harvest in 2015. And I heard that one and I liked it a lot, so it stayed on my radar. It was this kind of raw Orthodox thing with something different. And that something different has to do with this guy's background. His stage name in this project is, Vinaya, but it's also P.E. Pakane. And he's one half of Vitsaus, which is one of just the best Finnish black metal bands that nobody talks about. Vitsaus is sort of just has incredible riffs, just really, really good riffs, and it is thoroughly folky and epic, but also severe in a way that some of the more the certain Satanic War Master or Sargeist melodies that have now become like are now known as triumphant big riffs. Vitsaus it delivers a similar kick, but in a much darker, nastier way. It's Midnight Forest music for sure. And he was a drummer, but he was also an active songwriting member. He contributed guitar stuff, and I'm sure helped write from the drums. It was a two-person project, so there was an intense collaboration. Really strongly recommend checking out Vitsaus. But also, because of the way the Finnish scene is, he was also the drummer for Horna on what is debatably their best record, Sano Yese Arele, and the bassist of Sargeist on what is almost certainly their best record, Let the Devil In. Right? So this is someone who is definitely someone in the Finnish black metal scene. And what he brings to this more Swedish and French style is a Finnish mastery of core tremolo riffing, right? As well as some stuff that's really distinctive to him. I remember that on the Funereal Harvest, there was this advanced compositional stuff that was really uncommon then, that we've started to notice cropping up more in the last couple of years. So I think he was doing melodies with like extra bars and odd time signatures, playing melodies on the drums, which we'll get to a lot on this, and using this rhythmic openness and variation as a platform for long, strange, sinuous melodies that had a kind of they weren't big flowing hook riffs, but they were these kind of just sort of like morphine, slithering, violent kind of classic black metal riffs. And you could define the sound as like sort of hypnotic blast beat drone. So I was very interested to hear Theriomorph, which is basically the reincarnation of Kornir. What do you make of this one, death metal guy?
This is a very weird record. Up front, one of the things I'd like to say is I would never guess this was Finnish. I would never guess this was a guy with a role in some of the defining Finnish bands. Just because this is very outside of the standard kind of like melodic and songwriting conventions of the Finnish scene, or what have become those things over the past 10 years or so. This is really interesting from kind of this is a very top-down record. A lot of the most interesting stuff happens at a sort of high-level structural place. Moment to moment, I don't find this super exciting, but at the same time, this is distinctly not riff-based music. Again, we're back to that old classic. This is not to me.
But we both agree.
Yeah, no, this isn't riff-based music. This is very textural. It's kind of ambient in the way it's delivered, despite how aggressive it is. And I guess as far as like fixing it somewhere within a constellation, I came with a Venn diagram of Funeral Mist, Black Death, and Inferno from Czechia, and right in the middle of all three of those comes Theriomorph. So it's heavily.
Those all make sense. I don't know Inferno's earlier stuff, but I take your word for it.
Well, I would say even the last record that we covered last year.
Oh, in the sense that it's kind of psychedelic and droning?
Yeah, kind of like that, because it's more psychedelic and droning than either of those other two. It's got the weird rhythmic propensities of Black Death, and it also has just the kind of aggression and tradition of Funeral Mist. So you get you get this big cross-section, and what you get is something that is sort of structurally droning and ambient and highly modern, but from moment to moment is really indebted to kind of traditional second wave or Orthodox melodic ideas. So that's really interesting. As far as how much I enjoy it as a record, it's not really my thing, but that's no fault of the record. This guy is after very different things in black metal than what I'm usually interested in. But this is definitely a case where it's sort of like you with the doldrum. It's like, I highly respect this. I highly recommend it, even if it's not my thing. Like, this is clearly extremely good music. It's just, there's not enough big retard riffs for me. But I would also give it the caveat that this would not be a better record if it included big retard riffs for me.
Right.
It would be a lesser work if it had that.
Yeah. It's definitely after something sort of elusive, and this is one of those few records, I think, that lives up to the Orthodox thing of actually sounding kind of occult, right? You get the sense that this is actually sort of weird sex ritual music. With this sort of like mostly this kind of sustained battering, punctuated by these massive peaks of intensity.
And this is also well, I would also like to say before we go on, this is a drummer band, I think.
Yeah.
This is very drum centered. Obviously, this guy, based on everything you're saying and just looking him up on the Metal Archives, he's a multi-instrumentalist. But it feels like his heart kind of lies in the drums. And we'll get it. Well, I guess I can get into that on my first sample if you like. So one thing we were talking about on the Funeral Mist record, which was your favorite of last year, was the weird kind of layered drum stuff with both real drums and drum machine work. I'm not sure how it works on the Theriomorph record, but there's lots of sections with two separate percussion layers. Like, this is an essential part of this project's sound. So let's go to a song called Atigibus, A Passage of Cruel Power. And we're just going to go right to the beginning of this, and very quickly you'll hear there's multiple layers of percussion, and kind of the central riffing idea is really happening more on the drums than the guitars. So yeah, I think you can pretty distinctly hear throughout most of that sample, there's a second layer of percussion, a second layer of toms running over the more standard black metal beats. Mm-hmm. And this is like an omnipresent feature of the record. This is not a one-off. This is something continuous through the whole album. And the kind of dry production pushes it to the background a little bit, but it's an essential quality of the music. There's a lot of significance placed on it, and I think in a sense the listener is supposed to be listening to these sort of rhythmic inflections primarily, with some of the riffing pushed a little bit more to the background than we would typically imagine from a black metal record.
So here's a question. Would you prefer having the drums further up front?
I think in general in this record I'd prefer a slightly fuller production in general. I listen to those big tom runs, and I can hear what he's doing, but I wish they had a little bit more body, just so they would, stand out, fill in that kind of mid-range a little bit more. I don't think they necessarily need to be louder, but like a little bit of EQ adjustment I think would go a long way to making some of those features stand out a little bit more distinctly.
Yeah, I suppose you could say that's the point. It's occult, it's behind the veil. Not everyone's supposed to pick up on it, but I take your point. Something I do really like the timbre of this production, of this production. Like this kind of like.
I figured fuzzy, you would. This is your kind of production right here.
It's buzzy, woody tone, buzzing, woody kind of like dry but with fry around the edges of everything. And so I like the way this kind of like rattling way the drums sound. If you could have that but also have it be louder, I certainly don't think I'd object to that. That would just sound cool. That would be like, it's a guy banging on some bones.
This record is a little quiet. It's kind of interesting the way this is produced.
It's produced unlike an Orthodox record and a lot like a Witzhaus record. Which is sort of buzzing, droning, and like this, it asks you to turn it up. And in that sense, it's very faithful to the way that the early 90s, a lot of the 90s Norse records were produced. Right? Like, Emperor, like, the Emperor EP is loud as shit. You just have to turn it way up. There's something similar. This is, when you turn this up, it is very loud. But I think it's partly distinguishing itself from the more glossy take on this kind of sound. Say, like, the Offer Mod records that came out when he got out of prison. Like, the later ones. Which have some things to recommend them. But yeah, So, yeah, I take your point. I agree that especially there, the real action's in the drums. The riffing is very restricted, and it's got some of the things that are kind of like... it might be good to quickly say, like, I think both of us find the standard Orthodox riff form to be a bit just, like, not our cup of tea, and maybe presenting certain kinds of compositional problems. Or, like, just certain kinds of, like... The way it works, yeah, I don't want to get too much into it here, but, like, when it's presented in this way, you know, where, as you said, these kind of blocky, angular chords, right? It's none of these, they're not meant, in this case, they're being foregrounded in the drums. They're not meant to be center stage. But just, like, the standard riff form for this genre, I usually don't find that engaging, and I certainly think that's true here. And I was thinking about it, and I think it has something to do with half steps. How are you? So, like, the intervals these melodies often center on, it's like the root, the six, the minor six, obviously, and then one half step over the root and one half step under the root. And a lot of stuff just kind of glides down to that half step under the root and, like, hangs there, or puts a lot of weight on it.
Yeah, there's, I mean, the stereotypical Orthodox riff for me is, like, get three kind of blocky, angular, four-string chord shapes.
By blocky, you mean lots of chords, or lots of strings, right?
Yeah, like four strings, and then arrange them in a kind of angular way, but it's still basically kind of like a regular minor second wave riff, and then do kind of like a weird techie run at the end to let you know that this is, like, weird. You know?
It's also blocky in the way they're organized. That is, you can hear that these are like whole and half notes, right?
Yes.
They're sort of organized in processional. At its best, that can give it a sort of mechanical processional majesty, right? You know, if you hear, like, Aosoth just sawing on four chords, it's like... And you're like, oh, God, this is so heavy. But here, you know, it's got this sort of way of sliding, I think. It can create a very eerie atmosphere, and a sort of otherworldly atmosphere, and a kind of sinisterness. But if it's all that, the music can become a little slight and elusive. Like a little, like, not quite, it loses a bit of, it gets too vampiric and loses some of that werewolfy vim and vigor. Right?
We're back to the underworld debate.
yes. Team Jacob. But the sort of, and I thought about the differences. Those intervals are really important in second wave Norse stuff, especially, for instance, in Mayhem, right?
Yeah.
But, like, if you listen on De Mysteris, Euronymous is constantly changing that up with really majestic whole step stuff. You'll hear, like, two variants on the same phrase, and the second one will have a whole step. Or you'll hear some super epic Dorian scale type melody, and then he'll, like, sour that with the half step, and that'll set something else up. Or another good version of how this is used, Emperor hits those intervals, the more buzzsaw Emperor and Darkthrone stuff, all hits those intervals hard, but if you're just playing power chords, it's in a more death metal way of creating dissonance, right? Or, like, doing the most abrasive kind of thrash riffing. You're not, like, hanging on it as part of a minor chord progression.
Yeah.
And when Gorgoroth does it, they use them as passing tones in Dorian scales.
Yeah, well, Infernus is a once in a generation guitarist. So we can't compare most people to him. Well, I guess to be devil's advocate, weirdly enough, briefly here, I would say it's like, I think on a different record I'd be more critical of the riffing here, but given the kind of structural conceit of this album and how the kind of rhythmic ideas are so foregrounded, it's just, I don't see the riffing as very exciting, but for me it's so backgrounded, it forms a sort of ambient texture to me. Yeah. I can't bring myself to be too concerned about it. It's like, they're not really my riffs, but they're clearly not the sort of leading voice here.
No, I think if you feel good about it, I feel good about it. That's kind of my feeling as well. I just wanted to take it as an occasion to talk about that. Does that make sense? Like,
no, that's fair.
Because there's certain kinds of records where you will really gravitate towards the bass line riff structure, or I will, right? I'll be like, yeah, they're not fancy riffs, but like they just sound sick, right? And so this is he's playing in a style where the baseline riff form may appeal to some of your ears more than it does to ours.
That's fair. Yeah.
And I was trying to think that through musically. So it's not really about this record. It's about Orthodox in general and tendencies built into the riffing that then he's kind of responding to and using musically. So, next sample, Nocturne, Under the Uninvited. To me, this is easily the standout track. And what it does is it's got sort of the two extreme, it has the two major strengths of this record. Brutal repetition, punctuated by these very determinate moments of high-flying drama. And sort of decisive moments in the songs. The sample starts about 45 seconds into the song proper, and for all 45 seconds he's been playing this riff. And this is a really good Orthodox riff. That one gets me fired up every time. So what we're talking about there, so you can hear that is a sequence of awesome riffs in this. They're very faithful to this particular idiom, and they're all really good versions of it. The last one you just heard is the closest to just a buzzsaw and second wave power chord riff, and he just hits it really hard. Before that, you get this... but the big moment here, right, is the transition between the first two riffs. So the first one is this sort of beautifully phrased two-part kind of gliding vampire riff. You know, I can't even hum it, but it's too fancy. I think I'm doing bad humming today. It's good, and it has some of that sort of lift and sustain and fist pump that you get in certain Mayhem melodies. And then it just drops into this, and I'm like, that's how these fucking really chromatic minor Orthodox riffs should sound. Like, and it's really heavy. And you know, I always like slide riffs, right? Mm-hmm. But in this case, what's important is that it's not a slide riff. He's articulating everything with his left hand, right? And so that's like an orchestra doing glissando runs, you know, where they'll go like, and you're like, how the fuck do they do that, right? Or it sounds like the embellishments in the most technical extreme thrash from the 80s, right? It's like a thing Slayer might do. You know, that to me is just awesome, right?
Well, it's I mean, this is definitely a case where it's like this is one of the best articulation of these kinds of riffs on the record. Still doesn't really change the fact that I'm not really into the bones of these riffs, but I know a good one when I hear it, and that's a series of really good ones. Like a lot of this. A lot of this record is based off of very faithful but very smart interpretations of sort of stock Orthodox riff figures. And it's another case where it's like, I appreciate the rigor, you know, and oh, go ahead.
Go.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that it's definitely a case where people that are more into the kind of Orthodox riffing style, it's highly recommended to them, because they'll probably be able to juice this for more than I can and really understand what makes these distinct figures within that realm. I can't do it, but a lot of you guys listening probably can.
So speaking of the rigor, right? One thing that's important about this, right? This is it's an over 2-minute sample. There are 3 riffs. None of them repeat, right? There's no there's no like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 type thing, right? He plays 1 and 2 way longer than we'd expect, right? We came in halfway through the riff 1 sequence. And he's not cycling them on and off. And so when that change-up between 1 and 2 happens, it's massive. And it's decisive, right? It gives the song a definite direction, right? Clear forward movement towards the end. And even when he changes into that more sort of power chordy riff at the end, there's a huge weight in the change-up. So by sustaining... Unlike certain kinds, I think it is a basic principle that if you're doing kind of droning music, the droning black metal, the change-ups have to be crushing. But in this case, it's not just that they're crushing, they become moments for this kind of technical flair and grandiosity, right? It's like, we put the moment of drama there, right? Instead of it just being like, you know, Eric Danielson dancing around for fucking 45 minutes.
Well, and it's also, and another thing is that it is augmented again by that sort of layered drum performance. You know, big crushing riff comes in at the end. That's when these like shotgun rolls of those added toms come in, and those really are like a part of the riff. In a sense, you know, you play that in isolation on guitar, it wouldn't be nearly as special without this bizarre sort of like overly energetic drum performance underneath.
Yeah. And that's a tom version of, you really were right on with the comparison to last year's Funeral Mist, right? Which was album of the year for me. But that, although there were a couple others that easily could have also been, but but that sort of the rolls here, the shotgun tom rolls, are very close to the kind of spattering drum machine, malfunctioning drum machine snare hits that were spattering on and off like machine gun fire throughout that last song.
some of my favorite stuff on that Funeral Mist record is built around that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So he was doing sophisticated drum-driven stuff before this in the Cornier stuff, but like the kind of but it's possible that he was tuned into that Funeral Mist record too.
Yeah, or at least he's listening to the same stuff that led Funeral Mist to that idea. All right, so real quick, my next sample. So this album is structured in a weird way. It's very clearly you're supposed to listen to it from front to back. It's not very songy. There's about 4 pretty distinct full songs, and then there's another 4 sort of like odd interlude tracks. And when I say interlude, I'm not just talking about meaningless ambience. I'm talking about really sort of bridging ideas between larger pieces. And I want to play one of them in full. A song called Lunar Emblem, Sign of Night, which is actually probably my single favorite thing on the record.
The titles are great.
Oh, yeah. It's like... This is real black metal. There you go. So Lunar Emblem, Sign of Night is a 1-riff song, but it's not about the riff, but it's probably my favorite riff on the record. It's this cool sort of swaying nautical Black Doom riff that I think is really neat. But something really interesting happens here, and I think when I listen to some of these sort of interlude tracks, I imagine an album that is just 20 of these sorts of things, these sort of like micro songs, these experimental bridging ideas. And I think you could get something very similar to the effect of this entire record out of just stuff like this. And when we play it through, I'm just going to play the whole thing because it's pretty brief. I'm interested in what you think about this as the sort of connective tissue of the whole album. So yeah, for me, this is like kind of the high point of the record. I mean, it's a weird place to say is the high point for a black metal album, but this really grabs me.
Some might almost suspect you of being a contrarian.
I don't think it's like contrarianism.
I know, it's a joke. To some extent, we're both contrarians, obviously, or we wouldn't have a fucking podcast. No, I know what you mean. Yeah, but elaborate.
Well, I think that so this kind of gets clear of some of the reticence I have over the more like orthodox riffing. It really strips the record down into its constituent parts. So you've got the weird vocals. We haven't really talked about the vocals on this record, which are constantly bouncing between channels, trying to be really disorienting. It's got a cool, simple but elegant riff, kind of rooting everything. It's still got the double-tracked drums with the kind of tribal toms overlaying it, so it's still, within the conceit of the whole album.
Yeah, it's not just an isolated interlude.
Yeah, no, it is part of the continuum of the whole album, and I just like the atmosphere. I even like 30 seconds of just witches cackling at the end. I'm really down for conniving witches in black metal. I really like sort of like feminine witchy stuff in black metal. I don't know. You don't hear a lot of that these days. So.
Yeah, no, this is definitely, well, I think we're hearing more of it.
Yeah, nowadays we are, yeah.
Maybe not witchy in every case, but certainly this more lunar tendency, whether it's music that actually sounds feminine or sounds like it's kind of striving towards and worshiping the feminine, right? The best example being that fucking
the Narbaleth record,
Narbaleth from last year, and before that, although with a very different mood, the Flamen record, which I just think is outstanding, and I should mention more on the show. And we've gotten a few other things like that, but this is certainly a lot of Orthodox stuff is like that. Often it can be in this sort of anti-cosmic red dragon, sort of Tiamat, mother of night, hoist thy formless bulk up from the depths.
No, this is a lot more kind of carnal and horny in a cool way,
Exactly. This is concrete, carnal, and horny, sort of worship of the nocturnal feminine, the Lilith, or like it's the Kali Yuga, but I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah. We're gonna fuck a lot. We're gonna fuck a lot during the Kali Yuga.
Yeah. At least we can fuck a lot. So it's definitely got that very authentically going on throughout, and I think that's one of the strong points of the record. And I like this. I know what you mean about this. I personally really like the last of these sort of non-interludes. Basically, the last of these short songs. They're the things that are most song-like on the record, right? The last one sounds a lot like Blood from the Air, or Blood from Air, something like that by Coil. I'm sure this guy's super into Coil, and definitely a similar kind of cracked eroticism. Coil records, of course, more oriented towards worship, towards the masculine, but very like it's what makes these tracks substantive, is that he's not just doing spoopy interludes. He clearly listens to sophisticated and highly musical post-industrial stuff. So finally, I've done some intentional overlap between our samples. Speaking of great song titles, let's just listen to a couple minutes from Reflecting Skull. And this is really written as a full album, and you can tell because this transition is the definition of coming in hot. Yeah, so that is some aggressive riffing.
Yeah.
That's it's and the really fast drumming here. I mean, off the blasting, like the Funeral Mist from last year. This guy comfortably goes from a fast blast to a faster blast as well as the songs. He does that hardcore here, and the kind of riffing there at the beginning is awesome. So I think this is one of the most just muscular riffy parts on the record. The rest of the track is let's talk about what we just heard. It's this is real like attack riffing. And although they're not all power chords, they're thinner chords. They're not these big blocky chords.
This is like the most second wavy, or at least like Marduk kind of thing on the record.
Narrowed, focused melody. Yes, exactly. So they're doing a kind of thing. I was thinking of Marduk, and actually the Avsky blast riffing is that it has this like convulsing kind of blasted pedal point thing, where in this case you're constantly like you're sort of ritually dropping from the 5 or the 6 or the octave down to the root. And you're doing it in a kind of drawn out syncopated way. So it just
and that's almost like a convulsive kind of hardcore riff at its heart.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
I'm learning, Dad.
Exactly. It has the qualities that make a good D-beat riff. The rhythmic structure is different, but it works by exactly the same principles, right? I mean,
because good D-beat riffs to you are always about this like flaring out and then compressing in.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. And so here it's used over this sustained blast to give you just this like this rolling headbanging feeling, like and you know the irony is that even though this is super reclusive, rattling, dry one man occult black metal, this would just be so killer live.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with our final record of the night. And this one intersects with the co-prosperity sphere in a couple ways. This is the new record by Koldkrypt, titled, how do you pronounce this in French? Holocauste Global? You know?
Yeah, Holocauste Global. Yeah.
Holocauste Global. You always say it's like just do a stereotypical French accent, it's more correct, right?
Yeah.
And this is released on Ba Hessian Firm, where we've basically become the podcast promotional group for that fucking label. And additionally, related to the co-prosperity sphere, the actual real promotion for this record is being done by James from Cave Dweller Music, who has his own promotional outfit right now and is assisting Nick from Hessian Firm in promoting this record. So, there you go, guys. This is paying you off for the next year. I hope the check's in the mail, as you guys said. All right, so Koldkrypt, at first blush, seems like a big departure for Hessian Firm. It's the band's second full-length record. First one was in 2016. It was titled Full Moon. Not familiar with it, so, okay, we've got something new here. This is... Okay, how do I phrase this? Okay, so the core of this record is French black metal. And I leave that kind of open because it's several kinds of French black metal at once. You're going to hear a lot of big riffs in the sort of Seigneur Voland, Crystal Knock tradition. You're going to hear some ugly, nasty, but still kind of romantic stuff like Mutilation. And then you're going to hear even little brushes with more epic sort of antic type stuff. But that's only the beginning of the story. Really, this is a record that accesses all kinds of reaches of black metal. There is stuff that is extremely DSBM. There is stuff that reminds me of like limbonic art. There's touches of symphonic stuff around here. There's post-black on here. It's a really wide-reaching and far-ranging record. And, when I first started this record, listening to it for the show, I was like, this is really weird for Hessian Firm, which is kind of specialized. Yeah. It's kind of specialized in, what they call, in some sense, dark metal. A sort of like death-leaning Black Death fusion that tends to lean on pretty high technicality and pretty complex songwriting. And there's really not a lot of the death metal here. But then I started to think about it in a sort of a higher level structural way. And I was like, okay, this does make sense. So the essence isn't necessarily death metal riffing for this style, so to speak. It's about the structural conceits. And I can say, yeah, this Koldkrypt record, while riff to riff might be simpler than a lot of stuff on Hessian Firm, structurally, it's as complex as anything else on the label.
Yeah, which really just threw me for a loop.
Yeah, this is... You go through a lot of stages listening to this record. You think you've got your head wrapped around it, and then it just totally kicks you sideways with something new.
Yeah, so the record leads off with this just massive, sort of slow Seigneur Voland type riff. And you can immediately hear that this is a good band, right? Like a guy who knows how to play those kinds of riffs, not in the way of nowadays sort of raw tape black clones, but like in the vein of a raw black band, a real raw black metal band from the early 2000s, like coming directly in the wake of like Seigneur Voland or whatever, right? You can hear how it's authentic, and you're just like, whoa, who would have thought, having these big, simple, flowing riffs on Hessian Firm? And then almost instantly it shifts gears.
Yeah, and it continues to do that. You probably have to get like 2/3 of the way through the album before you've heard everything these guys can do.
Yeah. What I told you, I said somewhere in the notes, it's like, or maybe it's like you keep thinking, whoa, that was a clever head fake, until you realize they're not like head fakes. They're like they're clearly defined moves in a developing structure, and the thing that you thought was like a one-off, almost musical joke or punctuation mark, is actually like going to come back again at sort of like unpredictable but gracefully structured intervals. It's basically structured like a fucking symphony.
Yeah, it's
he introduces two not trading themes, but trading theme types at the beginning, right? We've got our sort of a thing he gets about that early raw French stuff, like the Seigneur Volant especially, is that it's triumphant sort of, but not at all in the way it's been flattened into now. It's very scowling music. And very melancholy also. And he hits that hard at the beginning, these sort of like glorious melancholy riffs, and then throws us into something much uglier. And for the rest of the record, he's swapping between those ideas, and all sorts of things on the spectrum between them and beyond.
Yeah, this is it's like, excuse me. It's like you said, there's a lot of figures in this record that you think are sort of like head fake moments, but then you realize the head fake has transitioned into a new 3-minute section of perpetually escalating and elaborating ideas. This is not a riff salad record in the sense that there's extremely angular kind of key changes and transitions throughout this album, but they are not one-off moments. They are substantial musical movements. That, when one of those abrupt key changes occurs, you're not getting a single riff and then back into the main motif. No, you're going to listen to an escalating series of 3, 4, 5 riffs within this new motif before it transitions to something else. So, despite the sort of aesthetic of this music, which is sort of, I describe it as like 2000 CDR black metal.
Yeah.
This is kind of like the highest articulation of that idea. The actual structural underpinnings of this music are far deeper and far more complex than anything you would have heard from that era. And that juxtaposition of ideas, this sort of like low art presentation.
It seems janky. Right?
It's deliberate, like Eurojank to a degree.
Yeah,
but it's only
2000.
Yeah, but then it's only when you listen to the way these songs unfold in this kind of processional movement-based way that you realize, holy shit, this is actually kind of brilliant. It's just
it's almost like he drew out the structure on a piece of paper with like this kind of riff here, this kind of riff here, and then filled it in.
Yeah, he filled in the actual riffs.
I don't think that's actually how he wrote it, but it has such a feeling of top-down structure. It's like, certain people, you can aspire to symphonic structure in black metal, and this band, in part because it's not showy about it at all, and doesn't overstress the details of that, really kind of nails it.
Yeah, absolutely. So with what you were saying, you were talking about, so we're going to open with a giant kind of Seigneur Volant riff, and then it's going to go somewhere different. Well, I've got that exactly. So
here's one for the kids, but
here's one for the kids. Exactly. So this is off the. So there's a kind of a long intro track, and then the first main song is called "Aux Oubliettes." What is that, like From Crypts? Something like
Oubliettes. Oubliette. It means like to the dungeons, and oubliette is a kind of dungeon that you would have specifically. It's a floor trap.
Yeah.
So when the guys charge into your hall, you grin and you pull the chain, and they fall into the dungeon below.
Right. So, okay. So, we're going to start a couple minutes in, and the first couple minutes is absorbed in a sequence of brilliant kind of like Seigneur Volant meets Melodeath lead riffing. It's genius. This is catnip for me. And you're going to hear more of that, but then something very different happens. Dude, so it's literally just like you said. It was like I was started listening. Okay, get past the intro. Here, sick kind of Seigneur Volan meets like big Melodeath riffs. Because this guy is also in a Melodeath band. So it all kind of makes sense. Okay, so French guy that's into black metal, he's also into Melodeath. Okay, this all scans. Then that break into that kind of like gnarly sort of like modernized LLN thing happens, and then you're like, okay, all bets are off on this album already.
You can hear, just there's this moment where it like stops and he just sort of eases into those first two notes, just bends it up by bends it up a fifth and a tri, and you're just like, you can hear him grin when he does that.
Yeah, he's like, oh, this is gonna freak the squares, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is such a man. This is a cool fucking record, man, because like the impulses behind this are. They're just so very, again, like 2000 CDR stuff and shit that nobody really knows or cares about. Like the most, there was so much stuff in the 2000s that was going on that was absurdly elaborate, like brilliant music, but it was only ever released on like, 50 copies on CDR, and everyone forgot it. Like, nobody knows about a band from, looking it up right now, a band from Tennessee called Firth of Damnation, who were doing this exquisitely complex sort of like semi-symphonic black metal, but very kind of technical in general. Nobody knows about it. It's all CDR stuff. It's just, it's some of the coolest shit in the world, but nobody knows about it. And this channels that essence of like very kind of, you've got this sort of flat digital production, which I really kind of like in this context. It really allows you to concentrate just on the pure riffing and structure of the music. And it just constantly throws you for a loop. It's not beholden to any standards of what a certain kind of metal is supposed to be like. Clearly, there is a core of French black metal operating as sort of the principal foundation of this music, but all bets are off beyond that.
There's a sensibility. There's a sensibility guiding this, not a preconceived idea of genre.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's not like, oh, he's beyond genres. It's that he knows what genres are and how to work with them.
Yeah, like you can imagine in the beginning of that sample that this is a guy who knows exactly what he's doing. We have a sort of Seigneur Voland riff against a very sort of Slaughter of the Soul lead guitar part. He knows what the constituent parts are, and he knows the effect that it will have. And the problem is a lot of people, especially non-musicians, think, it's like, oh, well, he knows what he's doing. That's a trick. No, it's just cool. It's just a good idea,
Yeah. It's craftsmanship, right?
Exactly.
That's the nuts and bolts technique and know-how and sense of history that allows you to do the art. Right?
Yes, 100%. It's and that's a thing that that's actually cool that you brought that up. This is a great example of a record that kind of blurs the pseudo lines that I've talked about between like craftsman's music and art music. This is music that shows you how you take this sort of nuts and bolts craftsmanship and make something really artistic and unique and compelling out of it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yes, because it's kind of like garage one-man project, but it's not a sort of proficient genre exercise.
No, there's something special about this. Yeah,
very special, very weird. Another thing it reminds me of in terms of the more epic riffing is just in terms of that specific kind of like before it was cool, janky Seigneur Voland worship. Do you know like who's the band who did Follow the Wolves to My Grave?
Follow the Wolves to My Grave.
You showed me that. It's some sort of totally ridiculous USBM that's like these French bands plus Satanic Warmaster on crack.
Are you just thinking of Wolves Guard My Coffin by Behemoth?
No, I swear that was a song title. Maybe I'm getting it wrong, but
it's something to that effect. Yeah.
Oh, was it just called Warwolf?
Warwolf?
Yeah, I don't know. Never mind, guys. I'm tripping. All right. So
we'll figure it out eventually.
Yeah. We'll go to Divine Inquisition.
This is a huge song. This is probably the centerpiece of the record.
Yeah, I almost left this moment for you, but then I was like, it's actually easier if I take the big moment. So the first, after that initial sort of skronkifying that we just heard, the album sort of continues in that vein, sort of sour French vampiric stuff in the old way, mutilation way, and sort of depressive, punky kind of shit, right? Very trench coat energy. And it hits a kind of deliberately drab continuum that almost, although sonically really different, mood is a little like Thy Light or something. Mm-hmm. With more drama, more grit, less uniformity. But then finally, we get to this just, I was talking about decisive turning points in songs on the on our last review. Here's a decisive turning point in the album. Dude, you can just hear when that lead comes. Like, there's a, I think one thing I like about it is that he's playing it in the way that you play RAC, right? It's, like, these are very fancy melodeath and heavy metal riffs, but they're kind of being used in this stripped down, stompy context.
Yeah.
And if you want to hear a more traditional example of that, the Seelan Volonen record from last year is a good example of this kind of RAC-style heavy metal leads, put flamboyant heavy metal leads installed in just vicious, stomping black metal. Here, they're even more over the top and just much closer to just, like, actual wheedly woodly guitar heroics, right? I mean, I was just like sticking my tongue out and waggling it from side to side.
Yeah.
But it's still got this stompy fighting bass to it. And it's and this driving chord progression. And it's also just really good. You know, it's just like, yeah, I mean, I don't like long hair rocker bullshit, but I do like heavy metal. And I think I've acquired much more of a taste for heavy metal through this show, to be honest.
Well, yeah, I mean, you were talking on the end of year episode last year was like it was the black metal guy rediscovering heavy metal, so to speak.
Kind of just discovering, actually.
Yeah.
Into this music backwards, you know.
Yeah, probably like most of our listeners did. You know, you start with Morbid Angel and then you find Iron Maiden a few years back. You know?
Yeah. You go from hardcore to black metal to death metal to heavy metal. Yeah. So this is that's just fantastic, right? And the other part I really like there is that it's juxtaposed just with the most obnoxious riff on the record.
Oh yeah, that just crunchy fucking like melodic metalcore riff. Yeah.
No, the sawing dissonant one.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
The one before, you know, that's like that is very Avsky or Soren. Just like nasty Swedish chromatic stuff. That's a good example of, there's been a more wandering, depressive dissonance for the last 10 minutes before that, and then there it just locks into these very focused, narrowed tones that are just like, I don't know, probably like just sliding tritone stacks or something, right? It's just fucking nasty. So you hit, it locks in there, and then it throws into just this glorious sequence of melodic heavy metal riffs. And that really just turns the album again.
Yeah, every time you think that all of the tricks have been pulled out of the bag, there's always something new. And
exactly.
Yeah, it's like the pacing of this record is remarkable. Because, you know, most extreme metal records, and not in a bad way, usually show you all of their tricks within the first 2 or 3 songs. This is a record that holds itself back through nearly the end of the album.
I mean, almost to the end of the album, I am asking myself, like I would, I don't know, you know, like I would in a certain kind of movie or something, I am trying to figure out how it's going to end. I'm not that invested in narrative as a paradigm of structure for music, but this album it's certainly a legitimate level for things to work on. This album nails it to the point where it's got me being like the bitch of the plot. I'm just like, how's it gonna end? I need to know. Daddy plot. You know,
you're looking up spoilers online while you're listening to it.
It's like I'm like, fuck, where's it go? Like, I'm an experienced metal listener. I know how he's going to end this. Okay, here he goes, right? He must be dialing it back soon. No, well, there it goes again. It's just the epitome of like, but wait, there's more.
Oh yeah, no, it's kind of remarkable how many ideas this guy manages to pack into the record, and still make them. Still give them a continuum thematically. You know, moods shift abruptly on this record, but not totally without warning. You know, there's
one of the dumbest themes in black metal is everybody dying. Right? It's a great cop-out. It's just like, great, you haven't had to say anything or have any ideas or offend anyone, right? Just everyone fucking dies. And, you know, great. Okay, that's... So, this record is pretty much about everyone fucking dying, as far as I can tell. This is, you know, it's very apocalyptic. And it's definitely like everyone's fucking dying and it's a good thing. But like, it's the most I don't know, it might be the most convincing version of that I've ever heard.
Well, it's convincing because it's stoked about it. You know?
Well, Because and not in a forced way, in a way almost like the last track is called. There's a kind of like the last track is called Fungus. It kind of reminds me of. I was watching Nausicaa in the Valley of the Winds with my girlfriend, like the first Miyazaki movie.
Yeah,
it's really fucking good. And the whole thing is that it's kind of post-apocalyptic wasteland, and the thing that seems like the enemy of life, the forest of decay, is so toxic only because it's processing toxins and sort of purifying the earth. And it's all just fungus and bugs and like the overgrown weird trees and shit like that. And so it's kind of like fungus growing out of the earth again on the last track.
Yeah, you have to have the rebirth after the apocalypse, man. You know, after the Kali Yuga is the state of new regrowth, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of tricks pulled out late in the record, Agoraphobia, the second to last song on the album. So clearly nothing's off the table for this music, but it still manages to surprise you because out of nowhere on the last couple tracks, a giant post-black influence pops up out of nowhere. And really, even more than post-black, it's like specifically Death Heaven type stuff.
Oh, and also, I mean, he's drawing on the most objectionable kinds of post-black.
Yes!
The guitar tone, the wheedly guitars in these latter two songs sound less like heavy metal and more like Agalloch. Like, like, I thought Ashes Against the Grain was in some ways had some pretty cool songs on it, but there's this wheedly woodly guitar stuff that makes it completely unlistenable to me now. This guy does that, but like nails it.
Yeah, I will say that my only caveat is like the first couple minutes of Fungus might be like a little bit too far even for me, but Agoraphobia, there's toward the end there is an absurd sequence of riffs that shouldn't work at all. You've got this like wonky clean guitar part into straight up Death Heaven sort of screamo black metal into Vindיר into a huge climactic dual guitar harmony, and it's just, in a sense, like, yeah, it's all the most objectionable parts of modern extreme metal tied together, just end to end, and somehow, goddammit, it really works. So, Black Metal Guy, have we finally found the acceptable articulation of a Death Heaven riff for you?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's funny. So many of those, if I heard them on their own, especially that noodly lead over the last thing,
Yeah.
like, if I heard that on its own or in a sustained way, I would hate it, right? But somehow in the kind of, in moving quickly between these different ideas and, you know, using them to build this much longer musical statement, it's pretty compelling, and it's also just fun to listen to. Like, there's a non-cheap novelty to the way he organizes songs. It's just inventive, and it's just like, okay, what's he gonna do? How can he sell me on this bullshit post-black riff, right? It's like, and he does. Yeah, so that big blasty riff, that was a Death Heaven type riff.
So you've got the clean riff, and then you've got sort of a micro, like, windier riff, and then after that, the big, like, constantly ascending one is super Death Heaven.
Okay, that makes sense, yeah. Yeah, like a whole album of that, well, we know I can't stand. He uses it well here as a punctuation mark, and it's also, I think that's on the riffy side for Death Heaven. At least from what I remember.
Yeah, they're
often just these pretty, vacuously pretty block chord sequences. But, like, that has some riffiness to it.
Yeah, that would be, you know, like the Walnut Tree off of Sunbather or something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, no, you have a point, which is, like, this is a record that manages to really bridge the gap between, like, high-level structural interest and just moment-to-moment excitement, which is really hard to do, like, harder than a lot of people realize, to make something that is very compelling in a sort of, like, you know, high-handed artistic way in terms of, you know, how it's arranged, but also continuously exciting and enthusiastic throughout.
Yeah, so, you know, like, so for my last sample, I've already said some stuff about fungus, and I've also got to go get drunk, so we're going to keep this one pretty brief, but, just anything else I need to say before this. It's like, this is the longest track on the album. It's the last one. It's this flourishing of life out of death. And this track in particular is that epitome of that. Track that can't stop. Always seems like it's going to end. Keeps going in a cool way. It's kind of... It's less like just a sustained climax than a very dramatic final part of a story. And it closes in a real... What you pointed out this about another Hessian release, the Into Oblivion EP we loved 2 years ago, right? It has a falling action section. Some people just don't know how to end a song anymore, right? This guy excels at doing it. We get a falling action at the end. What I've got for you now is... possibly the most bloated sample ever on Terminus, because how can I fucking sample 2 minutes of this?
Consonant